Alors nous allons...
So let's carry on talking about decarbonization with Elyse LAWSON, if she's nearby. Yes, she's coming. Elyse LAWSON is project manager at the Global Maritime Forum. She's going to talk about the Poseidon Principles that set a new stage for responsible financing for ships at the global level. Elyse is going to speak in English. Don't hesitate to turn your headphones on, those that you'll have to return. At the end, don't forget.
Welcome you. First of all, I should have...
Need a quick how to use the clicker.
I'll leave it quicker with a first question.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the Poseidon Principle, and can you give us a bit of history about it?
Yes, of course. So that's what we will kick off with, and I will be mindful of time, especially in the time slot right before a break. So I won't let anybody not enjoy extra sunshine. So I'll start with a quick video that should just play. It has sound too.
Il y a du son, si... Ouais.
So what started as just an idea over coffee turned into something that's now the Poseidon Principles for Marine Insurance. It was a discussion where the insurers were thinking about how can we move from just supporting clients and moving away from supporting things like coal or supporting industries that we now know are quite bad for the environment. How can we instead be part of the conversation with our clients and be able to be part of the whole decarbonization journey that shipping is currently in the middle of? So moving towards being an active part of the discussion, being part of these sorts of presentations, which is much different than Zoom. There's a lot of people in here. But how can we be part of this? How do we support our clients rather than just stepping away and saying that this isn't our responsibility and someone else will do it? So taking from the learnings from the Poseidon Principles for financial institutions as well as the Sea Cargo Charter and combining that with the regulatory framework we already have from the International Maritime Organization, specifically their data collection system, we combined those into what is the Poseidon Principles for Marine Insurance. We did this through a drafting group. We made sure that all voices from across the industry were involved, so we had some key insurers, as well as subject matter experts. We had class societies, we had ship owners, we had brokers. We wanted to make sure that everyone across the whole space was involved so that we found a solution that was easy to implement and practical and didn't lead to more work for the ship owners themselves. So I think the presentation now is a good fit from the panel that came just before me. What can we do for the practical implementation side of things rather than just talking about this at a theoretical level? So what we did is establish the Poseidon Principles, which is the first, for financial institutions, was the first climate alignment framework for responsible lending decisions, and now this is the first framework for incorporating climate alignment into policy agreements and into how an insurer looks at their hull and machinery portfolio. So basically, they create a standards benchmark for all insurers to look at what's in their portfolio at a ship-by-ship level, collect that real emissions data to be able to assess and disclose that portfolio level score at the end of the year in order to move towards the IMO goals, as the video said, 50% reduction by 2050, but also society's greater goals of 100% reduction by mid-century. Right now, we only look at climate alignment, so we're only looking at CO2 emissions of a hull and machinery portfolio. But of course, if the steering committee and the signatories and our community want to incorporate other things, whether that be some futuristic discussion of how do we incorporate wind assist into these decisions, how do we look at the life cycle of ammonia, as the first speaker talked about. How do we incorporate those into our decision making? That's something that we're open to. Of course, we need to evolve as society evolves to make sure that we have the best access to information that we have in order to make sure that we push all of shipping along this decarbonization journey. And the principles for now are applicable to any insurer that has a hull and machinery portfolio. The leads are the ones who are taking the lead, but also followers on that same plan are able to talk to the lead and be able to share that information and be able to report as well. Once we have reported for the first time this year, we'll be making sure that we make adaptations and adjustments to make sure that we're always up to date and always have the best solution that makes sense. And that would also include if we need to expand the scope at a later time, if there's more members of the insurance community that have access to real emissions data, we want them to report as well, which is why we have affiliate members supporting through this process. As I just said, access to real emissions data and that transparency is a key foundation of the Poseidon Principles. Without being able to assess and disclose and measure year on year where your portfolio stands based on real emissions data, not estimated data, is fundamental to having these conversations with clients, being able to discuss what needs to be supported with your clients and what needs to change, and just being able to understand where you are today helps you be able to make decisions of where you should be later on in the decarbonization journey. This is possible because of the IMO DCS. So that's the data collection system, which is a regulation from the IMO that requires all ship owners to submit their information on an annual basis. So they submit easy things like fuel consumption, fuel type, dead weight, and distance traveled. They do that for the previous calendar year. So about this time every year, that data comes back to the ship owner and it's verified. And that's where the Poseidon Principle signatories step in and say, hello, client, I would like to step in and request the same information that you just sent to classification societies or to flag states, and the verification that comes with it, so that all signatories have the real information in order to be able to do the calculations. That calculation looks like this. If you're like me and not a math person, it looks a bit scary, but what it is in short is just the CO2 emissions over your distance traveled. So it's a ratio that says it's an efficiency ratio. So how efficient is the type of shipping that you are insuring, and where can that efficiency be improved over time and ultimately lead towards complete decarbonization by mid-century. How we came up with those is our advisory member UMass, so that's University Maritime Advisory Services out of UCL in London, created a global carbon intensity trajectory based on the IMO's initial strategy of absolute reduction. So I guess I can point. Nope. There. So this is business as usual if everyone continued to do nothing. But the minimum ambition is this one, which would get us to zero at about 2080, 2070. Versus this is the 100% reduction target, and that gets us to 100% reduction by mid-century. And there's a different trajectory for each ship type and size, so that you're not comparing really, really big vessels to very, very tiny vessels and expecting them to turn out the same in the same equation. So then what we do is we aggregate upwards, so it's at a portfolio level rather than a vessel by vessel level, so that there's only one trajectory and one dot that all signatories report on, which is later in the slides. But if you are a red dot, which means you are above the trajectory, that means you are misaligned. And because the Poseidon Principles for marine insurance has two trajectories, if you're in between them, it's a yellow dot, and if you're completely below and aligned with both of them, it's a green dot. So there are 4 principles that I think Lars, wherever you are, said earlier. So as a warm-up for getting through these. So we have assessment that I just walked through, making sure that you have access to the right information and are able to calculate the AER and make that assessment. We have accountability. That means that because we use the real emissions data from the ship owners, we know that that access to that information is key, and we're going to continue to push for greater access to transparency and greater access to that data, because there's so much that we can learn from it and so much we can do with it once we have access to that. We have enforcement, which means that internally as a signatory, you're going to start implementing the standard covenant clause into agreements that just outlines what you are as a signatory, what you're asking from clients, and that you'll be requesting this data on an annual basis. We want to make sure that all signatories are using the same wording, so that's why we've provided it for signatories after a lot of discussions with the drafting group and our legal team to make sure that the wording is the same. It's easy for everyone to include, and we also have one of our affiliate members who's working on implementing that at a wider level, which I can get to later. And lastly, we have transparency. So not only does that mean that access to this information is key, but also telling people about it and being transparent about what being a signatory means, what sort of business decisions you're going to make with that. So that really ends up being back in the hands of the signatories, is that they've done all this work, they have a benchmark of where their portfolio stands, so now they can go back and have discussions with clients and share that learning on the bare minimum in the annual disclosure report, but at a greater level with internal sustainability colleagues, with others who are wanting to become signatories at events like this. So it really does reach beyond just reporting and disclosing every year. So that disclosure report will look somewhat like this. Since the insurance group hasn't reported yet, this is just a drawing based on the banks, since the banks disclosed theirs twice already, so they did 2020 and 2021. But it has the 2 trajectories. This specific signatory is aligned with the minimum ambition of the IMO, but is misaligned with the 100% reduction target. So it's in between the 2 lines, it's a yellow dot. So even though it's a negative 3% alignment for that year would be, let's say, negative 10. So to be a green dot, you'd have to be much lower than just 0. And we have 2 different types of signatories, or 2 different types of membership. We have signatories and affiliate members. As I had mentioned before, signatories are members who have insurance portfolios that cover hull and machinery. Right now, that's the primary focus because we wanted to have the most tangible outcome and the easiest to implement for signatories, so that's where we've started. Everyone else falls into the affiliate members category, which means that they are there to support and they're there to do, I suppose, preliminary research of where we expand next. So, for example, if we wanted to include reinsurance, that could be something that the affiliate members committee works on and tries to figure out what's the most implementable version for them, how can they access that data, what do they need to do to be able to become a signatory in the future. And it's exciting that this is the first presentation where I can actually say we're a real association now. We've filed our paperwork with the Danish authorities where I'm based. So we're the Poseidon Principles Association for Marine Insurance. So we're our own legal entity governed by signatories. So we have a steering committee and an affiliate members committee who govern and guide and steer everything that we're doing. And we're also self-funded by those members. So me from Global Maritime Forum acts as the secretariat, but we also have advisory members, so UMass as well as Swiss Re Institute. And we also are proud that IUMI is a supporting partner as well. So we officially have, I believe, 14 members now. It's growing and through conversations like this and onboarding calls, it's very exciting that we're going to continually grow and get more and more involved. We have a few in the audience, so that's exciting too. And I'll have Cecile come back up. So,
yeah, thank you very much, Elyse. I would have a few more questions. The first one is to get your personal opinion. You've just explained that you have more and more signing insurance and affiliated. Does that mean it's a success? Can we say now that the Poseidon Principle are a success or not yet?
I think so. I think you can always measure success in those small pieces, but also now that we've gone through a very long drafting process and had lots of conversations across the whole sector and the whole industry, it's been a huge success for people to be able to implement it internally, take these to their sustainability colleagues and say, shipping wants to be more ambitious than a lot of the other measures in the principles for responsible insurance or for some of the net zero insurance alliance groups. They now have a metric that they can take back to their sustainability colleagues and say, shipping's first, we're ready, we have a metric, let's use it. And I think that's a huge success for all of the signatories.
40 companies signed it. Out of how many? What would be your target?
I think the target this year is, so we have 9 signatories, so I think we're supposed to double, so I think maybe 18 by the end of the year. But I think Patrizia, our chair, has said a lot more, so I think she's really putting us to work to get that done.
It's again your personal opinion. Do you think the targets are high enough? Is it ambitious enough?
For the principles or for shipping, or both?
Both.
Well, the principles tried to be more ambitious than our predecessor. So we are the only one of the 3 that has the 100% reduction. But of course, the principles only do tank to wake, not well to wake. So there's a lot of space for improvement and space for being more ambitious so that it's a more real net zero, depending on how you define what zero looks like. So there's room there so that it aligns with those net zero groups. And of course, shipping can always improve. I think that's something that most people would agree with here. The demands from society and the demands from the latest IPCC report say that there's no time to waste, we need to do something now. So that means that ambition needs to increase, and that call needs to come from something other than the Secretariat of the Poseidon Principles Association. But
Est-ce qu'il y a une question ou deux pour Elyse?
1 or 2 questions for Elyse? Well, I would have one, if you can see me.
For coming to Paris. Well, do we have an idea when the first results will be published? And the second question is, will these results will be public?
yes, so the first reporting year is happening now. So everyone who signed up before our annual meeting, so that was the end of April, will be reporting this year. So that'll be out in December, depending on how quickly I can get it out for you and go on my Christmas holidays. So it'll be end of this year, and it will be public. So it's just going to be the same procedure as the banks. It'll be an annual report at the end of the year that'll have, I can go back to my, no.
I don't think you can come back.
That's okay. It'll have the signatories logo, some quotes and thoughts about how the year went, and then that final graph that has their one score. So it's not a vessel by vessel. Oh, Not a vessel by vessel level, but it'll have this. So it'll be something similar to that.
Okay, thank you.
Then one last question, maybe. If companies don't work on their carbon emission, if they didn't understand, do you think that they might be unable to finance their ships on the long term, and when would that happen? I mean, if you're not in the movement, will the industry and the finance industry will be hard on you?
Through the principles, no, we don't have a stick or anything. We're trying to work only with carrots. But I think from a society level and a consumer level and a stakeholder level, probably. I think we're at the point where consumers want to make sure that their products are green and want to be able to track that. We have access to data, we have these conversations, and the pressure from everyone else except the principles is there. So I think if you're not part of the journey now, you will eventually get left behind, but right now the principles don't want to leave anyone behind. We want to be able to have these conversations and be able to say, okay, well, these 4 vessels might not be performing as well, but instead to offset that or to move towards the right direction and take you along on this journey, we can do X, Y, Z instead. So, yeah.
There's hope.
Yes, let's hope.
Thank you very much, Elyse.
Thank you.
Elyse.